Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Consulting with Authority. As always, excited to be joined by a guest and a friend, someone that I'm actually doing some work with, and we're actually collaborating on some client work as well. So really excited to be joined by Arturo Del Rio, who's joining me. He is the CEO and founder of SalesMaster AI. Arturo, let's jump in. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Been really excited about having this conversation. I've done a lot of these, and I got to tell you, I like I've been super stoked specifically to have this. So we have had that experience of being able to work together and work on some of these things. And I got to tell you, that's not usually the case. Usually it's something a little bit different. So I've sincerely been excited to have this conversation, Scott.
Well, same here. We've had a lot of good conversations on a variety of topics over the last few months. And since we met and we were introduced by a mutual client that we're both doing some work for. And since we met, I just full disclosure, I got to tell everybody, Arturo, I am a user of your system and your services, and a happy one. So we'll get into some of that and talk more about it because it's directly related to the nature of these conversations anyway. But really appreciate you coming on, sharing some of your time and expertise. I know you guys are going through sort of a major rebrand and launch of what you guys have, which is not insignificant. And we'll talk some about that. But to begin, maybe give everybody just a quick overview of your background, who you are, how you got started in this world that you're in, what evolutions or key milestones happened along the way, and what you're doing now, this exciting new venture that you guys have developed and that is out in the marketplace.
You got it. Well, I was born on a cold, rainy Monday, so let me stop. Let me stop. No, so me getting involved in this, AI-powered, really business development solutions, right? All kind of comes stemming back from one of my first businesses I had. I was in my early. I actually founded it. I think it was 19 or 20 when I started this business. But anyway, long story short. Like most 19 to 20-year-olds, I was an idiot. And I thought I knew how to scale things and, grow businesses. And let me just go ahead and say, I did not. At the time I was, selling, I was selling wine. I had this wine distribution and consulting company I'd set up. And, for me, I'd go out, no problem, sell 40, 50, pallets a month. And it was, I don't know, it just wasn't hard. I just found it to be very easy and simple and straightforward. Mm-hmm. So, it was a big stretch for me at the time, but I wanted to scale the business. So I went and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to hire 7 to 10 reps, which was a stretch for me, let me tell you, at that time, to make this happen. And what I thought, obviously, if Arturo sells 40 to 50 pallets, that must in fact mean that they will too. You got it. That's how things scale perfectly and linearly. So, I did my darndest to really get people up to speed. I trained them. I thought I trained them on the same things I was doing. Lo and behold, 3 months go by and right, we're just not getting the result.
Yeah.
And I can't figure it out. I'm like, man, I did everything I was supposed to. I showed everybody what I did. And why am I not getting this level of results? So this is actually the impetus really for how I ended up even thinking about this area of where I'm getting into today. So where I'm in today with AI. Well, this is back in, for many of you, you won't know this, but there were times where you had to go to the library to do research before the internet days. That was a real thing that happened in life. I was there.
I remember as well.
You remember those days? So I went and I was like, you know what? Success always leaves some clue. Right? So I knew there had to be something that I was doing, whether it was me, the customer, whatever, that was different. I mean, there had to be a correlation between, my outcomes and the gap or lack thereof with the people I brought in. Mm-hmm. So I spent 2 of the most miserable weeks. I'm not a minutia guy. I am not the small, minor detail person. I'm just not that person. So it was an arduous task at best. But yeah, I went and figured out local demographics and libraries. I went and I used to always annotate things for really my own sales purposes, right? I would, if I was selling to a restaurant, I would, figure out what type of restaurant it was. Was it standalone? Was it in a park, in like a strip mall or something? Mm-hmm. How many seats did it have? Did it have multiple bars? Right? This kind of deal. What kind of food did they serve? I did the same thing with liquor stores. Again, in the wine world, figuring out, well, how many how many rows of liquor is there here? Right. You know, where is this? What's the town? So I went, and after the worst two of the world, I did notice, though, there was some very clear differences in my target audience than theirs because of the regions I was working in. So I went back to the drawing board. I used to have Monday morning meetings. By the way, we would start late because, well, two things. One, you ever want to get people motivated? Start at 10 a.m. on Mondays. You want to, people will lose their mind. Yeah. A 1 hour difference, by the way. The other thing, I like to have breakfast with people on Mondays, and we'd have our chats. But so we jumped in on the call, and we jump in and choose the call. You could tell it's been a couple of years of COVID. We used to get together physically. And I talked to everybody. I said, hey, you know what? If it doesn't fit this specific criteria, don't even bother.
Don't call.
I don't care. I don't care if it's next door. Don't. Mm-hmm. It's that 1 second is a waste. Do this. So lo and behold, goodness, 3 months later, and we had an average uptick of 30 to 40% in productivity in each individual. Wow. That was aggressive. So this mentality of looking at the details and really thinking about things ultimately led, you flash forward, I brought this mentality into technology companies. I'd never been in technology. I was fortunate enough to build and run, a very large, department for IBM, for the mobile device management world. I ran Latin America, built it from the ground up, responsible for part of Europe, responsible for part of the US, got to work at SunGuard Availability Services. At the time, I think it was about a $2.5 billion company. And they invented disaster recovery, which is super cool. And I actually got all my tech chops there. Right? I learned everything from cybersecurity to you name it. I also learned a lot about complexity, and my best lessons in life have always been what not to do. There's been a lot of those on the way, and working in major corporate America, and ultimately these major corporations, nationally, internationally. But what, ultimately, I wanted to change the way we think about business development. There has to be a smarter way to create this process that was easily repeatable, that could get somebody to produce day one, where you basically remove the guesswork from the process. Yeah. And that was really the mentality. And that's how we got here today, Sales Master AI. And, fortuitously, products and services have been on the market for frankly quite a few years, even under my past brand. And, now here we are. So that's kind of how how I arrived here. It was a very interesting and fun road so far. I think it's going to continue to be, though.
I think the future is bright for what you guys are doing. So rather than just stopping there and changing subject, let's dive a little deeper into this, just so people can kind of understand what Sales Master AI is, how it functions, what it does. Maybe just talk a little about what that product and what that service is and does, so people kind of have that understanding as we continue through the interview.
Absolutely. So, just a very, very simply put, we have kind of two ways we purvey Sales Master AI. We have this intelligent software that can automate your sales and business development process. Everything from finding the contact to starting the communication, all the way cradle to grave, right? It even follows up for you, right? So right now, Scott and I are speaking. Sales Master AI is probably chasing down a couple contracts for me. It's tapping a prospect on the shoulder, asking them, "Hey, I sent that note the other day. You haven't responded yet." And somebody maybe right now as we speak got a text message on my behalf with a picture of Ben Stein that says Bueller, Bueller, Bueller on it, and says, "Come on, man, starting to feel like Ben Stein. Give me a call." Right. So while all this is happening, we've just found a very interesting way of creating intelligent processes to automate the sand. Right. We want our customers focusing on the big rocks and doing what they do best. I mean, honestly, talk to prospects, close deals, follow up on deals that haven't closed yet, and engage ultimately when someone has engaged. We augment this with or what we call affectionately our aggressive growth ninjas that will manage the business development cycle completely for you. By the way, this is all on multi-channels, which is so cool. LinkedIn, email, text message, SMS, voicemail dropping on your behalf, all the way through social media and everything in between. We've even added the ability for intelligent retargeting, ad campaigns, and actually we're going to be doing full, we have callers and full sales cycle management all the way through close. As part of the rebrand, a couple of things were let go, but ultimately that's what we do. We use a combination of smart technology and AI to gain insights, learn things that other people didn't know, and ultimately automate all the BS that doesn't get you paid, and you engage when others engage. That's it.
Obviously, as I would have no doubt, you summed it up really well and gave a fantastic overview. Just as someone who is utilizing the system, and Arturo isn't paying me for this. He didn't know I was going to give a recommendation or an endorsement or a testimony or anything. But I will just say everything that he just described that the system does, it does. So it's not like when you listen to that, you're like, yeah, when you listen to something like that, you're like, there's no way that it can efficiently and effectively do all of those things in an integrated way. But that's the essence of the system, is the fact that all these things are now integrated and talking to one another. And yes, you can go buy or subscribe to 7 or 10 or 12 different services that can do these things independently and try to connect them together and build a Frankenstein's monster. And I did that.
A lot of people have.
Yeah, of course, because there hasn't really been a meaningful, viable solution until recently. So, but what you've built with SalesMaster AI and the other tools that surround it allows for that level of integration. And the way I like to describe this, specifically to other coaches and consultants that are looking to create more efficient and effective business development process in their firm, is I like to say a system like this allows you to automate everything you can and should. And I think that's really important, because a lot of people, it's yours. A lot of my clients, when I'm talking to them about potential automation, because it's an aspect of what I do too, through what you guys are providing, is I'll help them build out those campaigns and so forth. And there's for a certain group, and maybe you're watching this or listening to this right now, maybe that's you. And it was me to an extent. There is an inherent hesitancy or resistance to in particular, automated messages. And the resistance and hesitancy is understandable. And it comes from the place of the experience that virtually all of us have had online, which is where we get bombarded and spammed with nonsensical, non-relevant, non-value, non-empathetic, non-resonating messages on LinkedIn, for instance. You'll connect with somebody and then you immediately get a message that is, hey, I want to sell you this thing. And it's like, that's not a compelling, meaningful way to create a new relationship and build that rapport and cultivate that relationship, much less make it sell. And so, but that's our experience. And so when we hear someone say, oh, I can help you automate your messages, that's what we immediately think of, because and we have that negative experience, that connotation around that whole automation piece. And it's like, I want nothing to do with that. I want to be authentic, and I want to be genuine, and I want to be personal. And it's like, yes, you should want to be those things. You should be those things, and you can be those things, and you can still automate that too. So you can. There is a proper, thoughtful, strategic, empathetic, authentic, meaningful, efficient, and effective way to automate that. So again, what in my estimation, what Arturo has built and what he's presenting and what we're talking about here is a system that allows you to automate everything that you can and that you should. And again, it goes back to what he said. It's about it's about freeing up capacity. It's about freeing up your time, which is your most valuable resource, to go do the things that are the highest value for you, which is what Arturo talked about, right? Talking to prospects, working to close prospects on the value that you can bring to them, and then following up with the ones that haven't closed yet. So again, not to just restate everything you just said, Arturo, but I think it's a really important point, and I want people to get clarity around what SalesMaster AI is, and truly affirm that it can do everything that you say, and that it is not just
well, I do appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not just one of these dime a dozen automation systems that's just your philosophy does not even allow for
No,
this
it doesn't allow
bombarding
spam.
of sales messages immediately, like I've described, but like we both have seen. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the importance of this, because I should also speak to another group of people who are listening and watching, which are the people who may be doing the bombarding. Maybe they don't want to be, but they don't know of a better option. They don't know how to properly cultivate an opportunity in an automated fashion. Let's kind of draw a comparison between the status quo cliche traditional automation that we all know and hate, where we get bombarded, and the right way to do it. So however you want to describe that,
Sure.
the wrong way versus the right way.
The wrong way, what's amazing about the wrong way is there's a lot of things you can do wrong, but sometimes it's a little hard to pinpoint, but when it's wrong. You feel it. Right. So I'll give you one of my most loathsome examples. You connect with someone on LinkedIn. In split second, pow! You send a message, you get a response. I don't care what the message is.
Right.
We know it's from a bot.
Right.
Stop it. Okay. It's that simple. I know this may seem like a little harsh, but ultimately it's thoughtless. That's, to me, the difference between intelligent automation and automation. They're not the same. I'll remind everybody, a Pinto and a Bentley are both in the category of car.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not the same. So it's about being thoughtful with this, right? It's about taking opportunity to be yourself at scale. That's what people don't seem to gather. I'll give you a perfect example. And actually, very frankly, this is a campaign and a message that frankly was inspired. A lot of it was inspired by Scott. Right? We talk about the sincerity of a connection, the sincerity of wanting to have a true, be clear about this, actual networking conversation.
Right.
I'm going to repeat that because some people don't understand that. Actual networking conversation. That doesn't mean you jump on and you start pitching people.
Right.
See, that's inauthentic. That's where we lose the boat here, or we lose the show. Sending a message that you really don't mean. When I say to somebody, I'd like to have a 20-minute old school networking chat. I'm making a concerted effort. I'll say, and this is actually verbatim from Scott. I'm making a concerted effort to turn my LinkedIn into a group of people I know.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. That you may be sending that at some scale, but there's a difference between scale and blasting.
Right.
Right. I very sincerely put. There's a reason LinkedIn told everybody to get out of the pool. Stop sending 3,000 messages a month. You know why? Because they were of zero value.
Yep.
Hey, I'm impressed with your background. Really? Are you?
Did you even look at my background? Yeah.
Because I just looked and I noticed you have not checked my page. Not one time.
Right.
That's That is the name of That is the exactly what we're thinking of, inauthenticity. Now, this is critical, though. It's about being thoughtful, right? Taking a pause. Again, realistically, somebody sends you a connection request on LinkedIn. Are you actually sitting there and you have the copy and paste message, and in under a split second, you're going to send that note back? Of course not. Of course not. That's just about, that's a poorly thought out process. It's not anything but, in my opinion, lazy execution.
Yeah.
Because, even with, and not to sell against myself, of course, having things in one single pane of glass view end to end, of course, it's a better system. If you want to put together 97 different things and try to make it work and live the dream. But the point being is, even with those lower value systems, you can think about this intelligently.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's an important point. Yeah.
That's it. That immediate response mechanism is bad. Nobody responds that way except chatbots. That's why you think of that, right? Nobody has a positive feeling about them, generally speaking, unless it's one of those three where there's a person that actually responds, right? That's the mentality. It's about thinking about what you're doing and then executing in a way that is true, right? Mm-hmm. That is authentic. And you can do that at scale. But what you don't need to be doing is sending a blast of 4,000 messages talking about how you're impressed with someone's background whose page you haven't even seen.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that would be my a big critical juncture. And the other thing, too, is the other part of this, and this is where I lean in on this often, Scott, there's a severe cost to DIY. People think they're saving money sometimes when, in fact, the reality is you do need a professional. Right. Ultimately, I am not a sales copywriter. Okay. I know how to sell and I know how to write emails. I'm proficient. I've been doing this for a long time effectively, but I'm not Scott. So the reality is, right, if you need some next level thing of that variety, you go to a professional. If you're sitting or dabbling with a website and you're neither a web builder nor a web designer, nor a programmer, you have to start asking yourself, are you saving money? Really?
Right.
I don't think you are. And overwhelmingly, not only is that time ill spent at something you're not great at, more importantly, you're not thinking about what you've lost.
Exactly.
What did you miss during those 4 hours you could have been doing effectively?
The opportunity cost is the biggest single expense that any business ever has.
And they don't see it most of the time.
And no, you don't see it. And oftentimes the time is fleeting, or the distraction feels so urgent that you just ignore the opportunity cost. But when you go back and you analyze objectively, what could I or my team or whatever been doing during the time where I was dealing with this problem, or trying to figure this out, or trying to learn this new skill set that I don't need to learn, right? Someone else that I can easily afford can do this much more proficiently and much better than I can. Or there's a system out there that I can leverage that can do it much better, more efficiently than I can. Why am I investing the time and effort and actual dollars, right? I mean, it's people will look at, I'm not talking about SalesMaster AI, although it fits in that category, or my services, but it's anything. When you're making an investment around business development, they'll call that an expense. And it's only an expense if it doesn't work, right? If it's not proven to be effective, or if you don't give it your full effort and it doesn't work, then that's when it becomes an expense. Otherwise, it truly is an investment that you should absolutely expect and demand a return on. And when you get that demand, when you get that return, all of a sudden, how much more of this can we do, right? Becomes the question, because your time is completely freed up. This idea of opportunity cost, especially with solopreneurs or people who have small teams, which is a lot of coaches and consultants, frankly, they must, and I'm in that group too. We must protect our time as militantly as we can. Right.
Well, listen, you need that like you need oxygen,
right?
When you're a solopreneur. Okay. And, not in a bad way, at this stage, I think we're up to like 40, 43, 46 employees. Right. We have the ability to breathe a little bit in certain respects. Right. I can delegate certain things to certain individuals. When you're operating as a solopreneur, and having done this myself, and I'm speaking directly, this is my me talk, right? And I remember at the time, one of the things I thought to myself, I realized if I put a little bit more time in this area myself, I'll probably cut $150 off my cost a month. And these are the decisions when you're thinking small.
Right.
Just because you have a small business doesn't mean you have a small operation. That's not the same thing. You can have, let me tell you something, there's solopreneurs out there doing 50 to 100 million a year. All right. Now, what is the gap between those and the folks that, are failing? Up front, I think it's very simple. You're failing to plan. You're literally setting yourself up for failure by not executing intelligently and allowing the people who are best at what they do to do it. I had somebody years ago when I was running Dream Build Live, one of my coaching firms, and actually it's for business development, sales growth, scaling. And I remember talking to one of the clients and said, well, I cannot afford to have this e-commerce suite built the way it needs to be. At this moment, I said, well, what's the impact of you doing it the fast way?
Right.
Well, it's likely to create some problems with this. The customer experience won't be the same. I imagine I'll have higher attrition rates. We start going through this, and I said, well, it sounds to me like you can't afford to do it this way.
Right.
Because you are entering in knowing that you're setting yourself up for failure. So the other thing is sometimes people need to realize you got to pause, you got to slow down and speed up. Very difficult. Right. I suffer from this myself. Let me tell you. And in startup mode, we all have the same problem, or when we're early stage. And in solopreneurs, sometimes it's forever.
Mm-hmm.
We forget, that being in a sprint all the time, being busy does not mean you're productive always.
Right.
I listen, as a guy who has driven a lot of sales and business development in my life, and I've done so effectively. Right. And not to my own horn, and it's just true. My numbers have suggested I've been an elite performer everywhere I've been. You know what I've noticed? I missed 2 monster opportunities in the past 6 months. And where was the error? Instead of doing and employing the technology, meeting follow-up tag and never follow up again, I decided, no, I'm going to work these 2 manually while I'm running and doing 400 other things, building the business, acquiring new technologies, grow. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, Mr. Rely on the tech and let it handle the minutia so you can focus, stepped out, decided to be better at this than everyone else. And what did I do? I ate it. Very sincerely, one of those deals about a $70,000 a month deal.
Wow.
Where should we be spending our time, folks? Right. So it's just one of those reminders that you got to learn and you got to remember all the time. You know, it's like one of my favorite Zig Ziglar quotes. You know, people ask me, you know, why, you know, I would keep doing motivation. You know, I had it once and it was great. He's like, well, you know, it doesn't last forever. He's like, well, you know, that's the same reason, same thing with bathing. You know, it doesn't last forever. That's why I recommend you do it often. Right. So it's just something you kind of got to stay on top of. But anyway, sorry for the tangent there.
No, it's a great tangent and one that I think is good for all of us to remember, because we can all, I mean, you just said it, you just gave your own story. We can all get in our own way. And so, and that's going to happen. It is inevitable. What we want to do is mitigate that, right? We want to be aware of it and mitigate it. And that's where, and we're talking about business development, but frankly, Arturo, whatever system, right? Whatever aspect of your business we're talking about, you want to be able to run it in an efficient, effective way that over time requires less and less of you, less and less of your time, your effort, your focus. And that's true whether you're managing a team or you're doing business development or your sales process or financial issues or general operations or client delivery of the solution. You know, ultimately, if you want to grow your business beyond solopreneur, whatever level you want to grow it to, and you want to have the lifestyle that you want, right, which is enough free time to make yourself happy, whatever that looks like, then you've got to remove yourself from that equation. And that requires a thoughtful, strategic plan, just like Arturo said, and the tools, technology, and people to support those efforts so that you don't have to be directly involved. Again, we're focused on the business development point of view because that's sort of the topic of the day. And that's where SalesMaster AI comes in, and it's where Arturo's expertise is and my expertise is in. But this concept, this principle applies across an organization, regardless. Going back to business development, let's break this down. So we've talked about the importance of automating the process, and whether you do it, you know, whether you create your own automation system by plugging in a bunch of systems together and hoping that it all works, or you use a turnkey type of solution like SalesMaster AI is. Regardless, the automating everything that you can and should is important. And you can do that in a way that maintains your authenticity, resonates with the client, truly is meaningful and valuable in terms of establishing that relationship, as opposed to it's robotic and cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be that way. Let's talk about sort of the as you're thinking about building out a campaign. We're talking about automating it, but regardless, let's talk about the essence of building out a campaign. There are 3 aspects I want to kind of dive into with you here. One is access. Where and how can we best access the individuals and the prospects that we want to communicate with? And Arturo, for the sake of our conversation here, you've worked across industries, across businesses, so you could speak to a lot of different ones. But our focal point today will be people like me, other consultants and coaches who are working with business leaders. So first question is around accessing their prospects, where and how. Second question that we'll dive into is the flavor of the messaging. When we're making initial contact and we're cultivating that opportunity. You've already given some examples and we started to talk about that a little bit. I want to dive a little deeper into what does the nature of that messaging look like? And then thirdly, going back to the sequence. So the sequence of the messaging itself, but beyond that, you know, if we're talking about email as one of the media choices that we use to communicate with someone, that has its own, 1, 2, 3 messaging sequence. But there are other media, you talked about this, multimedia cross-platform, that's very, very important to make a campaign truly worthwhile. truly valuable. And so we don't want to just stay on one media platform when we have the alternative of reaching people in different ways. So I want to kind of speak to that. Let's talk about access first, though. We'll kind of take each one kind of in a quick
Absolutely.
fashion. How would you tell someone like me, a consultant or a coach, in terms of they want to be in front of more business leader prospects, where should they go and how should they start to make contact with that person?
Well, I'll tell you, in unequivocally, in no uncertain terms, if you're dealing with business leaders, LinkedIn is the place to be. I mean, period, end of story. 64% of B2B deals went through LinkedIn, started on LinkedIn last year.
That's amazing.
And that's the data that we have available.
Right.
So imagine how many went through there that we just simply weren't aware of. So ultimately, you're talking about a captive audience of 780 million people. I don't think, personally, enough said for me.
And the other note too, which you're probably going to get to, but the other note too, which I'll mention, is those are business leaders as a rule, and they're there for business purposes. That the platform of LinkedIn is for business purposes, as opposed to other platforms that are not necessarily purely focused on business. Sorry, go ahead.
Correct. No. I mean, frankly, you just took the words out of my mouth. You have a captive audience of people who are in business to do business on a business platform.
Yeah.
To me, there's just not much else to discuss. And, while the native tools in LinkedIn, I'll be, candid and transparent as usual, they are terrible. They are still better than doing it yourself.
Yeah. Right.
At scale, you can find out people, you can interact, you can join groups, you can target based on similar interests, likes and dislikes. We buy from those we know, like, and trust. So there's a lot of intelligent ways that we can gather information there and actually reach out organically. Mm-hmm. Again, the combination we do is a combination of human and technology. So why is it so effective and why do we need both? Well, again, there is a time and place for automation and there is not a time and place for automation.
Exactly.
And this is where we talk about it. Starting communications at scale intelligently should be automated. Continuing the conversation should be done by you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't, I think we make things, Scott, I think people have made this more complex than it needs to be.
I used to.
We all do.
Yeah.
It's not, because we get into it and especially if you're creative and a strategist, which I know you're, by the way, killer at, frankly, and I give no idle compliments, folks. This is very true. You can ask anybody who knows me. But one thing that's critical about this is stop making this so hard.
Yeah.
I used to train people this way. I'd ask them, hey, now you go to a party and you're just a regular party among, people you're interacting with, and you stand next to someone and they start talking to you about themselves and they continue talking to you about themselves and continue talking to you about themselves. How quickly do you want to roll? I mean, this is just simple. Well, we've taken something because it's of a business nature, and now we've made it this foreign thing. Time out. What is different about the scenario I just talked about and that communication on LinkedIn? Nothing. It is two individuals that are communicating. Now, let me ask you again. Now you go to that same party and someone says, hey, Scott, what's your background? What do you do, man? Oh, well, right? And here we go. Now we're talking. Well, the question is very simple. Who do you want to talk to at that party?
Yeah.
Well, who do you think the prospect wants to talk to on LinkedIn? That's it. Yeah. Again, we've made it wildly complex. I jump on there and some people are not going to get with the program, right? I've had conversations with people. I send them a note. Let's jump on it. Oh, I don't want to network. Well,
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, right? And I will also mention this, and this is just a personal thing. If you're on LinkedIn, a social network for business, and don't want to network, you may want to read that first part of that sentence again. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Sorry. But I'll jump really, talking about the effectiveness of communication and the sequence. This is critical.
Right.
This is critical. Now, this is actually not my opinion, or frankly, Scott's opinion. From this is a data point from the National Advertising Association of the United States. Right, these are people who have been doing this for a long time, and they were talking about increasing conversion rates. Very interesting study. But what they talked about was, hey, in this day and age, you want to increase conversion rates. In fact, you want to increase them 300 to 600%. Take what you're doing on one digital channel and start hitting people on 4 or more minimum digital channels.
Wow.
Now, what does that mean, right? So LinkedIn, that's a digital channel, email, text message, voicemail, Facebook, right? Whatever that may be. This is the retargeting ads that we'd made mention of. The reason is simple. Think about yourself. Again, we don't have to make this complex and weird. You're sitting at home, you're looking at something of interest. Bellwitz, I got to go grab dinner out the oven. I got to go, you know what? This happened. We're in the middle of work. I have a planning session. Somebody calls me, Arturo, you know what? Can you jump in here? I have a quick question about this. You give us a hand. Pal, we're off to the next thing. You know, with the overwhelming influence of constant information from all angles these days, you know, it's not the 1830s where there's, you know, that one newspaper that comes out on Sunday, right? You're getting hit with information overload constantly. And moreover, the pace of change is the only thing that's constant. So not only can you not keep up with things that are happening, but you're getting slammed with info from every side. It is obtuse, I believe, this day and age to believe that communicating through one methodology is going to be effective. And anybody who believes that, unfortunately, it's not going to be my opinion. It's going to be your reality. You will notice an impact. So for us, again, and again, we'll just, you know, whether it's Sales Master AI or what you cobbled together, Sales Master AI, the criticality and the effectiveness here, whether it's the managed or DIY versions. You think about this: LinkedIn, email, text, SMS, voicemail, and all the social media components, Facebook, Instagram, the posting in LinkedIn, right? Not just direct messaging, right? These are all realities. And then moreover, the fact that we build the website in the system in Sales Master and it's sticky, it also later on, this is a downstream thing, but it allows you to do one more thing: intelligent retargeting ads. Why is that important? Well, I don't know if you're familiar with this, folks. This is important, especially for solopreneurs. You know, people have this thing where they want to throw money at paid ads. Dude, stop it, right? Especially in your world. It's just not effective. You don't have the money, right? And if you do, you know, that might be a different conversation if you really can throw serious dollars at it. And serious dollars isn't 10 grand a month, by the way. Talking about 50 grand plus is serious ad revenue. So what ends up happening is people have this misconception where they'll put money on that, but then wait, why isn't it converting? I mean, I've got this great ad, I got this great copy, because people don't get converted on the ad. Very little understood by people. They're actually, I believe it's between 70 and 83% are actually converted on the retargeting. Well, guess what? You're talking about a difference in cost that's astronomical. So, and again, this is part of a business development workflow. We need to start thinking about this as an entire flow, not just one linear channel. That's just not how it works. So, by the way, for maybe $50 a month, you know, you could be following 1,000 people around and hitting them once a day with an intelligent ad placement. I'm saying again, $50 a month for probably 1,000 people you're hitting with an ad once a day, plus email, text, SMS. You get the picture here. And what's amazing about all of the things we just described, if you did it right, you're not manually managing anything. This is fully automated. So all of this is constantly, this engine is out there getting it for you. You, again, right back to what we talked about, focus on the big rocks, which is talking to your customers and converting them, right? Or losing fast. That's fine too. You're not going to win them all, right? But from a business development standpoint, Scott, I think that's one of the biggest misses today. And the only play people have is, let's just throw more at it. Stop. This is why now emails have changed. Let's talk about the emails and other sequences. It needs to be a combination and has to feel organic. If I send an email today, I'm going to probably wait 3 days if I don't hear from you. And well, I'm going to wait. My technology is going to wait, and it's going to text you. Hey, Scott, did you see that email I sent the other day? It's Arturo, by the way. From Sales Master AI, right? You know, natural communication. No one ever sent a text message to someone that said, "Dear Scott, comma," right? You know what I mean? I get them from folks all the time. Let's go back to what we started the conversation. This is not that hard. You're just making it harder than it needs to be because you're operating a way you would never operate. So people talk about the problem being automation. It kills authenticity. No, your lack of authenticity
is what kills automation.
Is what kills automation.
That's a really important point. Let's say that again. It's not the automation that kills the authenticity. It's the lack of authenticity that kills the automation. And I think that is, if someone just heard that, that's worth the price of admission today, because I think when you understand that and you know that that is true, because it is true, if you think about it logically, it must be true. When someone understands that, the opportunity for them to leverage automation, regardless of what tools they use and how they do it, right? This is not a commercial for Sales Master AI, although you should have a conversation. But regardless of how you do it, the value is in the automation, but it has to be done authentically. So, and again, maybe that is easier said than done, but the best way to be authentic in your automation is just ask yourself the question that Arturo posed a second ago. If you were your prospect, how would you want to be communicated with? What would you be likely to respond to? It's probably going to be question-based. It's going to be value-driven. It's going to be about that prospect, not about you. You talk about the other person, talk about your prospect, how you can serve them, but not how you can serve them, what questions you have about their situation that leads you to how you can serve them. So there is some nuance and there is some expertise in developing that messaging. But at the end of the day, that messaging can still be authentic, even authentic to you and natural and organic, even though the messages themselves are automated. Those are not the same thing. Automation does not mean inauthentic, and authenticity does not mean it has to not be automated, right? Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can have authenticity and have authenticity automated, because it's still who you are and it's still about serving that individual at the highest level.
Yeah, you nailed that, man. You nailed it, Scott. And by the way, what he's talking about, very sincerely, this is not just about biz dev. And I know that's really our area of the world here.
Sure.
But man, automate your invoicing. Why are you messing with that? Right.
Right.
Again, if you don't know how to write the sales copy, why are you writing sales copy? Again, you know what I mean? This is just things. This is more about the method than the recipe, right? If you know
100%.
If you know how to make chili, that's great. But if you know how to cook a steak, it doesn't matter what other things you do. You know how to cook the steak. What we're talking about here is a mindset, right? Where you learn that the things that don't drive revenue should not be managed by you. And if you can find a way to take something and do it better at scale by replacing yourself or creating intelligent systems, whether it's your accounting or frankly, your operational onboarding process, whatever that may be. And if you're not the person, go find them, right?
Yeah.
I'm not the person for back and ops. What did I do? I brought in a gentleman, Sela, or Josh, or a couple of these individuals who are monsters beyond anything I'm going to learn by reading 10, 20, 30 books. And by the way, while I read those 10, 20, 30 books to develop a skill I do not have, that innately I'm not going to be as good at the experts, I just missed that $70,000 a month deal, right? So
yeah, right.
That's I think that if we, this has been really helpful, and I got to tell you, Scott, I'm very excited to share this with a lot of people. That there's a lot of people I know need to see some of this stuff.
Well, same here, and I don't know that even I have heard it articulated as well as you have. And I think the conversation has been very helpful with me in terms of getting clarity on this question about automation versus authenticity, but understanding that the two they can and should go hand in hand is how you make one work with the other, right? So the last note I'll make too is just for everybody listening, and you may have heard me say this before, and Arturo, I think you and I have talked about this too, but you're talking about all aspects of business, right? Making sure you're taking yourself out of the equation so that you can grow easier. You can focus on your higher value activities, whatever those may be. There's a simple framework I developed a number of years ago called ADO, and it's automate, delegate, outsource. So automate everything that makes sense for you to automate. If you can't automate it to a technology or a software, then delegate it internally if you have those resources. If you don't have those resources internally of people who have capacity to do that thing, then that means you should outsource it to someone who can do that thing. And so if you follow that model and that principle, you're going to be able to free up a whole lot of time, take away a whole lot of anxiety and stress, have a better lifestyle, and at the end of the day, have a stronger, more productive, and more profitable business, because it's not all relying on you to be the expert in all areas. So automate, delegate, outsource. I think is a worthy framework. I need to do a better job doing that myself. None of us are perfect, but as long as we're aware of it, we can aspire to be better.
But I got to tell you, Scott, that was wonderful. And I would like you to send me that afterwards.
Yeah, sure. I've got a couple of slides on it.
I got to tell you something. You see, you really are my masterful at this stuff.
Well, I appreciate that.
So well put. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Scott, for having me today. This has
absolutely been awesome. No, it has been great. Last question, and then I want you to tell people how they can get a hold of you or learn more about SalesMaster AI if they have interest, which they should. You can also reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through my experience of SalesMaster AI if you want to hear about it. Last question, Arturo. Biggest lesson learned in your professional or personal career? I know that's kind of a loaded question to end with, but what would you say in your time of doing business? What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
It's really two things in my personal opinion. Understanding, and I know I think I already said this 3 times today, but understanding your zone of genius and figuring out what you should and should not DIY again, which you just mentioned, I actually summed up very well what I've learned over time. ADO, I'll remember that one. And moreover, one of the biggest problems in business is ego and pride.
Yeah.
Period. Nothing.
Yep.
You got to let it go. If you're unwilling to learn, unwilling to be coached, I'm a CEO. I get tapped constantly by my team, and I work every day to, own it. And ultimately, it all kind of comes down to your mental state of whether you're responding or reacting. Mm-hmm. You react to a drug, you respond to a situation, right? How to respond accordingly and learning how to step out of that picture, analyze the situation truly and objectively, and realize that if there is something that's forcing you or a decision you're making based on, again, pride, ego, or I can, or I'm better, you need to take a pause and realize that is the best way to fail.
Yeah.
And that would be something I would really suggest as a young man, especially in my early 20s, and making these decisions. Unfortunately, I've always been coachable, but I certainly had more pride and more ego. I think a lot of us did in our early teens and 20s. And you know what? It was a opportunity where I learned from those mistakes.
Right.
And that led me to a better understanding of really what we're talking about here, which is where you should be and should not be spending your time. Because you have one resource that you can't get back, and that's it. It's time. Learning how to manage that appropriately is the difference between, in my opinion, success and failure.
100%. That's a fantastic note to leave it on, Arturo. I appreciate it. Someone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about SalesMaster AI. Where should they go? What should they do next? Of
course. So I'd love to, you hook up with me on LinkedIn. Don't worry. It may be the AI for a little bit, but it'll be me too. I'm just playing. But you can check me out. I'm Arturo Del Rio Jr., CEO and co-founder of ADMD Solutions, SalesMaster AI. You can check us out at salesmaster.ai as well. And ultimately, I check out and talk to Scott. Anytime you need to get a hold of me, he's a partner of ours. We work together on a lot of different things. And in all sincerity, really, the strategist I would recommend for getting things off the ground. And I mean that very sincerely. He's not paying me either.
Sure. Thank you.
But we met through a mutual client, and we've been able to really create success in a very accelerated period of time for them. In just a few months. I think we're probably maybe only 2-3 months in, and they've already been seeing results, and they're happy. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're delivering value, and that's all we care about. Tell you the truth. It's about the result. So, but Thanks again, Scott. I really appreciate you having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We will do it again at some point in the near future. It's a great conversation. I appreciate the time, Arturo. Be well, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, Smart Solutions Media. Smart Solutions Media empowers business owners, consultants, and other independent professionals to easily attract better prospects and transform them into long-term clients. If you're a B2B consultant or service professional and would like to start filling your pipeline with better quality prospects, visit us on the web at smartsolutionsmedia.com to learn more about what we can do to help you. Be sure to complete the short 2-minute accelerated growth scorecard you can find on the website, and you'll receive a complimentary strategy session where we'll give you specific insights and recommendations to help you attract high-value clients. Until next time, make sure you are consulting with authority.